Part of the solution for the AMRAP sets that I was doing early in the year when I got to 180 for 13 on the back squat, part of the solution was rowing. I quickly identified that my upper back was a key component to squatting, which is something that in my books for the summary of this year, I'm going to write that was one of the key takeaways of this year. The realization that the upper body has a lot to do with squats and deadlifts. Something that I thought about, but I didn't really truly believe until this year. AMRAP sets of any kind, specifically squatting, will show you what's failing purely by what's burning and what's giving up its structural integrity. When I was doing these sets and pushing to the 13th rep, my upper back, my arms couldn't handle it. And I was finding myself failing in that department sooner than I was in my lower back and even quads department. Think about that. Couldn't freaking hold the bar, man. I just could not hold the bar. And eventually I wouldn't be able to hold the rack position, and then my elbows would start to drop and even go in front of me. And then once you lose the tightness of the upper back, then it's just a fishing rod phenomenon where you just start rounding over. As soon as you lose your lat tension, man, it's very, very hard to squat. So rowing is a good thing. I was doing it a few times a week at the height of my AMRAPing. The only thing with that is that barbell rows are very, very taxing. And the only way I could make him work 2 times a week was simply because I was using very, very light weight. I was using 60 kilos barbell rows. I'm capable of much more, but I was just worried about body English, worried about making it too much of a compound lift. So I just kept it at 60 and tried to really focus on the upper back. Because when you get to 100 kilos and perhaps even like 3-plate barbell row, if you can deadlift, like I can deadlift 550 or whatever pounds it is, 262 kilos is my best deadlift. So 140 kilo barbell row is possible with a shit ton of body English, right? So, these barbell rows, it's a spectrum. You go from really, really strict at 40 kilos where you are just focusing on the lats and the traps and the rear deltoids. And then when you slap on 3 plates, it just becomes this heaving match where it's more of a deadlift than it is a row. But it's still a row, right? And so I was always mindful of that, and I kept the weight low. Today, since I'm in this bodybuilding arc, as some of you guys have called it, I went over to the, what's the machine called? ISO lateral row machine or something like that, where the arms are independent of each other, and it's a plate loaded machine. So I tried that today after I did all of the lat pull down business, and I did a lot of that. I think I did like 9 sets of that, various different weights. Really, really smashed myself. But I really wanted to do that row machine. And for the first couple of sets, I didn't really know what sort of height I was going to use on the seat. I didn't really know which hand position. I was playing around for a few sets there to work out what's going on. But then eventually I settled on the widest grip, palms down, on one of those handles. And I set it up so my ribs were on the pads, and there was not just a rowing component, but also a thoracic extension component. And when I felt that, so, at the bottom of the lift, the weights are pulling you into scapular protraction, complete rounding of the thoracic spine, of the shoulders, everything's fully rounded. And then when you squeeze in the contraction all the way at the top, you're not just pulling your hands towards you, but also there is a thoracic extension component. So you're kind of like sticking your chest off the pad, the pressure's on the ribs, and you're kind of like curling your spine up as well as retracting the scapulars and the arms and flexing everything. So it's like a amazing stretch, amazing contraction. And I think your rowing is great and all that, but if you can put emphasis on that thoracic extension, I think that is when rows have really, really a really powerful effect, because that carries over to the deadlifts, heaps, right? Thoracic extension, and also squats, right? Because you're trying to prevent that thoracic structural collapse. Because once your once your thorax collapses, once you get that rounded shoulder kind of posture, that whole computer gamer and too much of a telephone user, collapsed thoracic spine. Once you get there, then you're putting huge pressure on the mid back and then eventually the lower back, and then the lift's gone, whether it's a deadlift or a squat. So when I started feeling that, I was like, wow, this is a freaking amazing exercise. Absolutely amazing. And on top of all of that, it's not like a barbell row where it costs you your freaking soul, because it's such a freaking heavy thing to recover from. And I put on, I think it was 80 kilos that I had on the machine. I don't really know what the comparison would be to like a proper barbell. But the fact that my hamstrings are not on, I'm sitting on this machine, my lower back is not on, it's a huge win. Now you can use a device to really target as heavy as you want, as you can. Target the things you want to target. And this is where these machines have an amazing effect, right? Because we can sit here and be completely minimalistic in our approach and be like, yeah, all you really need is a barbell and a squat rack. You can be that, but like you get to a point where, these barbell movements, whatever you do, man, I feel like your lower back is copping it whichever direction you do. You do deadlifts, lower back. You do squats, lower back. You do barbell rows, lower back. Everything's lower back. And so how many points of lower back can you spend per week? Not a lot, man. Like if you're squatting heavy, you're pretty much screwed. Like you're pretty much done. And so the barbell row for a long time, I've always respected it. And then this year I was like really respecting it because it was carrying over to the squat. But how do you fit that shit in, man? Some of you guys were saying seal rows, and I could probably rig that up with my bench somewhere in the garage, but that takes a bit of time. I got to move shit around all the time, and I wasn't really a fan of that. But this, like, you go to the gym and you can actually get into a machine which targets the upper back of the barbell row. So your lower back and hamstrings and glutes are chilling. That's an amazing freaking piece of machinery, man. Amazing. And I know there's many other ones in the gym with cables and freaking all this attachment. But anytime you can substitute your lower back and your hamstrings from barbell rowing motion, that's a win, man. Because, let's be honest, man. I want to spend most of my lower back points on squats and deadlifts. Truly, that's the rank, right? Squats first, deadlift second. I can't be, spending a shit ton of points on barbell rows, man. I love rowing for the upper body portion of it, but spending all my lower back points on a barbell row and giving squats a miss, like, come on, let's be honest here, man. Squats are much more beneficial to you than barbell rows. Let me take that back. It depends on your goals. For me, speaking, I want to squat, man. I don't want to be barbell rowing. Even though barbell rowing is amazing and it can help my squat, but if it's taken away from the squat in terms of the lower back and hamstrings and all that stuff that I'm holding the position while barbell rowing, then you start to kind of question its value in your program. You throw in this freaking ISO lateral row machine, hammer strength machine, whatever it's called. Man, what a piece of freaking machinery. It's like real benefit. And that's so this bodybuilding approach where you are using all of these tools at your disposal to essentially play with physics, right? None of these are real movements. Like these machines, stabilize, manipulate physics in such a way that it exposes certain muscle groups which would otherwise be very difficult to get in a normal barbell garage home program. I think these are the ideas that I had when I joined the gym. I just want to try all these different things. I think as long as you have a baseline of barbell movement in your program, like let's say for me, like squatting every day with a barbell, and you don't become too dominant in your programming when it comes to machinery, I think you will have a positive outcome. I just imagine that if you are 100% machine orientated, you're not going to be athletic. You're not going to have coordination. You won't be able to squat or deadlift. You're just going to become this like segmented human being that is really good in these machines, but you can't do shit. Like you can't squat, you can't deadlift, you can't jump, you can't sprint. Whereas some of these other movements like squats and deadlifts, I think these carry over much better to athletic endeavors like real movement. So as long as you have that component, maybe, a few times a week you are touching some of these big three movements, like also the bench press is in the mix as well, like in terms of the upper body. And then you can jump on the chest press and the freaking row machine and or whatever, and you kind of mix it up. But it's a great way to get more work into some of these muscle groups without, using the pressure point, the precious lower back points and hip hinging points that are just make it impossible to recover from. So this is the real benefit to these machines. And in an ideal world, I'll freaking buy each one of these machines and fucking chuck them in the garage and just go nuts with it. But you can't. Like it's too expensive. Like I was looking it up in the gym. Like if you want to get that hammer machine, it's like $3,000. By the way, I don't understand why this stuff is so expensive, man. Like how is it that expensive? Like you can buy a damn car for $3,000. You're telling me this row machine is $3,000. Obviously, it's probably a supply and demand thing. Like everybody wants these things, and I don't really quite understand it. Like surely it doesn't. Like you can mass produce these things. Like IKEA furniture comes into your house for like $20, man. Of course, it's timber, and maybe steel is really, really expensive. Maybe that's the problem. Steel is very expensive, or whatever the freaking metal that they use. I struggle to understand why this stuff is so expensive, man. Like it's we call it a machine, but it's not really a machine. It's a freaking lever, man. It's a lever on a fulcrum that spins around, man, and with a seat. So it's a chair with a lever and a fulcrum, and you're just swinging that thing around. And the guy's like, "Yeah, $3,000." It must be the steel. I don't know. I don't quite understand it, but anyway, this is why gym memberships exist, and this is why you basically need a gym membership if you want to have a full-on wholesome training with maximizing everything. Because no matter how you do it, man, the lower back, man, you can't recover that shit that quickly, man. It really, really, hard squatting and hard deadlifting and hard barbell rowing. I don't know how you freaking have a good frequency in all of them and exist. I'm sure it's possible, but you keep on hammering the common denominator, which is the lower back. So anytime you can get away from hitting the back in one of those movements, you're laughing. I think it's the best way to go about it. So these machines definitely have a place. I've changed my tune. Definitely changed my tune. There's definitely a place for them. Appreciate you guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.